Hello and welcome to the Bald and Bloviating podcast. I'm your bald and bloviating host, Mookie Spitz, and I am back, exhausted but refreshed from LA Comic-Con 2025. Was an amazing experience overall. Thought I'd share some of my thoughts and feelings about the event and put it into the context of being an author, being a content creator in 2025. Walking the aisles, co-barking my books with a writer friend of mine, and just taking it all in. Sometimes it takes a few days to process a big event like that. By nature, they are designed to blow your mind and your wallet. Sensory overload. And especially for a guy who spends an awful lot of time creating content in a solo or one-on-one kind of manner, being out there in the LA Coliseum with 100,000 plus other people in an atmosphere that could be best described as a crowded airport on acid, quite the state change. Also physically debilitating. I'm no spring chicken, as it were. I used to run all the New York half marathons through all the boroughs, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx. And then I did the big New York marathon. I ran the Chicago marathon back a few years ago. And I can do it. I've got myself together. But 3 days on one's feet, constantly in motion, and most significantly, spending a lot of time at a booth barking your books can be draining. So it's taken me a few hours, a few days to recoup. And I wanted to just unload a little bit to share the catharsis and, again, put my experience within the broader context of being a creator in these busy and dizzy digital days. On my other podcast show, Bald Ambition, I had a 3-part show talking about the wall, which is essentially the tsunami of digital content that is saturating all of us all the time. And being a content creator, knocking on that wall, scratching that wall, trying to climb the wall, let alone break it down in terms of differentiating yourself, standing out, getting attention is the biggest challenge. Attention has become the commodity of our age, more important than material wealth, more significant than even direct influence, because this is broad influence, if you can do it, if you can get it, that ultimately has profound ramifications for real-world power and even money. So everyone's talking about attention. And this was through the looking glass, because you were physical. You were in the real world. Now, there were virtual reality and augmented reality exhibits. Near our booth, you had the Stan Lee experience with virtual reality and holographic projections of the iconic characters. There were rows of video games set up for folks to literally sit on their ass in the middle of the convention playing video games. I was astonished by that in the gaming area. You had dozens of folks hunched over playing video games in the conference hall, the convention hall. But the point here is you were physical. You were mingling and mangling with literally thousands of people for hours. And these folks were, I would say, 10 to 15, sometimes 20% of the crowd. 1 in 5 people walking around you and near you, sometimes higher percentage than that, were in costume. They were dressed up like their favorite characters. And the outfits ranged from bargain basement do-it-yourself costumes, cobbled together with creativity and savoir-faire, if not a big bank account, all the way up to what would be considered super professional Hollywood quality uniforms. I saw some Star Wars stormtroopers wandering around, for example, indistinguishable from the ones you might see at a Disneyland ride or from the movies themselves. I even had a fellow standing at the booth interacting with him. They were fans of my co-promoter, Ingrid Moon, the author. And he was in an elaborate outfit, and he showed me his Star Wars ensemble, which is an entire room in his home dedicated to uniforms. This guy's a big cosplay kind of fellow. Everything from the Emperor's Guard from the films, wearing all those red robes with the creepy masks, to all the iterations of stormtroopers throughout the series. This guy is into it. Many folks wandering around were into it. And the overall mood that I would love to share right off the top is one of communion. Same tribe, solidarity. When folks were walking by our booth, we were SP31 all the way to the far end of the South Hall of the Convention Center, near some of the food tables on a corner. Not a bad space in terms of traffic in the suburbs, as it were, of the convention. Folks were walking by literally by the thousands throughout the course of the 3 days, and everyone was cordial. Everyone was part of something larger than themselves, and at the same time intimate enough to acknowledge each other. And the common bonds that all these folks shared were this communal geekery. We are all weirdos into fantasy, science fiction, TV shows, movies, streaming series, books, stories. We want to bring our fantasies to life. This is a cool and safe place to do it. And here it's appropriate to be inappropriate in this geeky, weird kind of way. It was a public display of camp. That's the best way I could describe it. The gay community has been doing this for decades, of course, longer than that, which is dress up day. And by dressing up in this campy kind of way, you're putting a mirror to society. So the drag queen, for example, is usually an exaggerated, over-the-top projection of a view of roles in society seen through the eyes of, in most cases, and to this illustration, a gay man. And you get over-the-top exaggeration. The village people dressed up like the Indian, the mechanic. I don't even remember who else was part of that ensemble. Pure, unadulterated camp. We are dressing up like roles in society to highlight that every participant in society has a role. It's all made up, folks. It's all synthetic. So we're weird. We're on the edge, or you might think so, in terms of behavior, identity, maybe even sexual orientation, kink, what have you. But to quote Ricky Roma from Mammoth's Glengarry Glen Ross, you think you're queer? We're all queer. It's all dress up. I love that line from the Mammoth play because you have an actor playing a role who's playing a role. Salespeople are actors. Actors act, but we're all actors in multifaceted, multifarious ways throughout our life. We act as a colleague. We act as a parent. We act as a child. We act as someone dressed up like our favorite character at a Comic-Con. That is the essential nature of camp. And here I loved it because it was camp on a grand scale. It was macro camp. It was inclusive, diverse, not in a whiplashy, compensatory, let alone political, DEI, woke, MAGA, Democrat, Gavin Newsom, AOC, JD Vance, political clusterfuck kind of way, but in the exact opposite kind of way. I saw none, zero. I saw thousands of people. I wandered the floor. I went from area to area. I must have walked, again, the equivalent of a full marathon at least over the course of the 3 days, not to mention standing, barking in my booth with Ingrid, but I checked it out. I did not see a single person dressed up or otherwise who exuded any kind of political vibe or negative perception about America, our culture, the event. No protesting, none, zero. No expression of any ideology outside of everyone wandering around like weirdos in camp, playing camp, dressed up like their favorite characters, interacting with each other. Halloween for the whole family for 3 days. That's the aspect of the convention. I always called it a conference for some reason because my business background, I'm used to these things as a conference. The convention was fantastic in these terms. A release, a catharsis, a projection of society, a microcosm of the macro seen through the lens of everyone's weirdness and creativity. And that was great. That ultimately, I believe, is the purpose of these things. Now, what are these things? Now, I didn't really know this, and I just did a quick search. There's 3 big Comic Cons. There's the San Diego Comic Con, run by a non-profit organization, apparently, and they have the brand identity, as it were, that is seen as the OG of Comic Cons, and that occurred a little while ago in San Diego. I'm recording this in Orange County, California, which is essentially in between San Diego and LA. I missed the San Diego one. I was invited graciously, as I was mentioning, by my friend and another science fiction writer, Ingrid Moon. On my Bald Ambition podcast, I do a couple podcasts with her talking about being a sci-fi writer in our age, talking about recording an audio book. Check those out. Ingrid's awesome, and I'll go more into the dynamic that we had and the learnings I had at the booth in a few. But Ingrid invited me to join her. She had reserved this booth at LA Comic Con. she felt she had room. We did the podcast together. We've got a nice rapport. And again, she was gracious enough to invite me to co-bark with her our books together. But I was not at San Diego. This is the LA Comic Con, which is, from a business point of view, is the opposite in structure from San Diego. LA Comic Con is apparently run by a private organization, Kamikaze Entertainment. And then you've got the New York Comic Con on the other coast, which is again a for-profit expo run by Reed Pop. So I'm not going to judge or evaluate any of these. That's not my place and outside my ken. I don't know the details. What I do know is this is the first one I attended, and I'm tacitly assuming that the mood and the vibe at these other events are similar, because I talked to many folks outside the booth, browsing our booth, who attend all of them. It is a common tribal experience for campy weirdos who like to dress up like stormtroopers and their favorite characters to go to. In addition, a characteristic of all of these Comic Cons is an opportunity to meet their favorite stars. So the actual humans inhabiting the uniforms, the makeup, the outfits, playing the characters that they mimic, the characters that they love to watch, read about, are there. So in another area of the LA version of these events, they had autograph lines set up. That was monetized in an interesting way too, where literally celebrities would show and people would pay anywhere from $20, $30, $40 to $300, $400 for the opportunity to get autographed swag, selfies, and any kind of documentation to take back with them to substantiate that they mugged a camera or a lens with their favorite stars from their favorite shows. So you could dress up like Daredevil and then hang out with the guy playing Daredevil, who, by the way, was my co-seller's favorite. I tried to get a photo or two from the distance, but I guess it's not the same as spending a few $100s to get close, share oxygen, and participate in this kind of fiscal folly, but fandom essential. Money, money, money. A sandwich, a bad sandwich at the little cafe, $14. But you get the drift. No different anywhere else. Once again, I'm not going to criticize or comment about the business model. It's not my point in this little follow-up. What I'm getting at, though, is this communal experience of people devoid of ideology, politics, ethnic, gender, sexual, socioeconomic class, background. Everyone was equal on the floor of the event. Talk about an egalitarian experience. Aside from the cost, as it were, Bernie Sanders would approve of this, as would Donald Trump, for that matter, who loves a good show. He would probably try to hog one of the main stages and give a speech for an hour and a half. But that's a whole separate story. The point here, again, is what a lovely experience to be had, seeing mostly the best in people. And to add some specificity to that, Ingrid and I had the booth. People were walking by. We had placed our books in a nice display. We had shelves. We had bookends. We had signage. We had table liners. We had brightly colored tablecloths. We had posters. I'll put in a pic. But suffice to say, not everyone would be interested, and they get sold to from booth to booth. That's what people did. Hi, how are you? Are you into science fiction? Are you a reader? Do you like Star Wars? Etc. The worst that we got was simply being ignored. No one got mad, no one got upset. And the best that we got were sales of our content. Sometimes people would be walking by, minding their own business, giving zero buying signs. We would call out, reach out, get their attention, start pitching our content. And lo and behold, a reach to a wallet, a card, and they would buy. People bought books. People bought our books. They didn't know who we were. Ingrid has some fans, has a fan club. But I really do not. At least within this context, no one knew Mookie Spitz. No one had ever heard of Johnny Fazuli and the Transfinite Reality Engine, let alone Super Santa. It was all new to all these people. And in a little bit, I'll go into their tastes and their predilections and what I learned about selling, at least live in this kind of atmosphere. But suffice to say, again, everyone was pretty sweet. And even if they overtly had no intention to buy, they listened and they engaged. And here's the other thing. Because everyone had this commonality of being cosplay, science fiction, fantasy, comic book loving weirdos, part of this grand tribe with tribes within tribes, small talk was effortless. So someone's walking by in an outfit, you comment on the outfit. They loved humor. Someone's in a full Jedi Knight robe holding a glowing lightsaber. And then we would jovially ask, are you by chance into Star Wars? Ha ha ha, ho ho ho. And that could be a lead-in. Ingrid would sell her Star Wars-like trilogy. And when she was at the opposite end of the booth or talking to another potential customer, I would pitch her books too. Are you into Ender's Game? Are you into Fallout? Based on t-shirts, what they were wearing. We would ask them, what kind of science fiction do you like to read? The art of consultative selling, which is all about getting to know your audience, digging up their implicit needs, and then paying it off with the benefit that you can provide, receiving the information that you have acquired from not so much talking about what you're trying to sell, product, service, what have you, but getting to know them better. And because we had all of this commonality at the convention, that was a great starting place for doing exactly that. What an amazing opportunity. What a warm, qualified audience. And that's what we did, and that's what we enjoyed doing. And that's a good segue to some of the best practices and things that I learned. Now, a great place to start that is to ruminate a little about signage, about what people see. A few logistical learnings: always have a QR code handy. Back in the day, going back a decade more, when QR codes were a bit of the rage because of their novelty, and everyone was seeking a direct touch point between the real world and the digital world. And people were first starting to explore NFC, near field communications. I'm in marketing and PR, and I actually worked with teams who integrated QR codes into campaigns so that people would be able to see an advertisement And then the call to action would be to scan the code and then get more information on their mobile device. Now, the initial phase of the QR code after the hype and excitement was a dud. And the reason it was a dud was because you needed to access any QR code using an app. And apps for QR codes were not preloaded on phones. So you had to go out of your way to download a QR code app. And the initial QR codes demanded that you open the app and then use your camera through the app to access the QR code and then be taken to the website. Who does that? Hardly anyone. Who did that? Hardly anyone. I remember being part of a major campaign, millions spent with a physical installation, and the bottom of the inverted pyramid where you extend reach and engagement, and then you want that conversion. The call to action was to go visit the website with more information about this condition. And it was placed at the heart of a ready-made exhibit in the heart of a major park in a major city. And there was a big old QR code. And everyone, the client, the agencies, everyone used that as the fundamental metric. How many people are actually going to see the TV ad, see the subway advertisements, wander through this big park, and go to the base of the exhibit and scan that code and be taken to the website where all the goodies were. The disease education, further calls to action, downloadable assets, even an opportunity to reach out to a physician. So the conversion was, shall we say, highly disappointing. And the reason was, as I'm saying, who had a QR code app? Who would bother to open up that app? QR codes were still a novelty. They were used by just a geeky part of the population. Now, what's happened since is a major technological tweak, and that is you don't need to do anything except turn on your camera and point your smartphone camera at a QR code, and then either you've got the settings set so you're taken immediately to your browser on your phone and the website instantly pops up, or if you've got a little checking mechanism, you get a little, at least on the Apple phone, you get a little yellow rectangular box that you then tap to authorize your phone to go to that website. That's it. So that little tweak has revitalized the QR code for marketing and communications. And now they're way more prevalent than they ever were, and the utilization of them is way easier. And companies are using them. So learning number one is you're selling something live, whether it's science fiction novels, an illustrated satirical holiday novel, or anything else that demands or would be conducive for a go to a website, call to action, learn more, follow up experience. QR codes are invaluable. I did not realize this. So I had set up little signs with QR codes for my Venmo and my PayPal, which is kind of duh. Like if you want people to transact, you put your Venmo and your PayPal if they don't have cash. Credit cards demand their own point of sale system, which I didn't have. Ingrid had that set up. And I didn't think of my books. QR code to my books website. QR code even better to the Amazon link to my book, so people can have that on their browser. So after the convention, they remember talking to me and go back and, hey, I talked to that guy and he had this multiverse book. Sounded kind of interesting. It had cats and shit on the cover. Maybe I'll get it from Amazon. There it is on my browser. That was learning number one. Learning number two, the obvious, the point of sale obvious, especially with a crowd like this. Covers make all the difference in the world, and it's gotta be, if you want the eyeballs and the asses, as I say, if you want sales at a Comic-Con, at a convention with science fiction and fantasy fans, then you need a science fiction and fantasy cover that is to expectation but still titillates them. I was talking to Ingrid in the booth, and I was telling her about my favorite designer, Raymond Louis. He's responsible for converting Esso into Exxon. He is the designer of the Avante asymmetrical automobile, a classic, not to mention an entire encyclopedia of amazing logo designs, brand identity transformations, and engineering marvels. The guy is really something. And he had an expression that was fundamental to him, which was Maya, M-A-Y-A, which was an acronym for most advanced yet acceptable. And here's where I always blow the shot, because I always go for most advanced and blow your mind, which is Mab-ya, not Maya. I overdo it. I always overdo it, especially with my creativity. I write for myself, and I've bloviated in many of these bloviations as much a rationalization as an excuse, as a way of finding my own personal happiness. My science fiction book was written to appease myself. I had a vision of what constitutes a perfect science fiction book for me, and I did it. Now, the benefit that I got out of that is unbelievable. I have written the book of my dreams, and it's worth every penny of potentially lost revenue. Opportunity costs in both directions. I'm burning cash writing my books rather than billing hours. And B, the flip side of that, which just is salt in the wound of my personal spreadsheet, it's not really selling for two reasons. One, I'm not really hustling it. And the other reason is that on its face, as was brought out and made obvious during this 3-day convention, is that I'm not playing ball. My cover for my book is awesome. I commissioned my wonderfully talented niece, Lou Berger, to do the cover. And it wasn't only to save money by keeping it all in the family and exacting favors from my relatives. I really liked her style, and I thought it would fit. And I love the cover. I don't want it to be any different. If there's a multiverse of options, this is the Leibnizian greatest of all possible ones. But the crowd did not think so. It looks more like the cover of a whimsical kids book or a poetry book. It doesn't look like a multiverse jumping sci-fi adventure starring this anti-hero con man who's an asshole, but he's lovable. And there are space battles in my book. There's the ultimate simulator. There's crazy shenanigans in Cancun and Las Vegas. The hero gets beaten up. The hero flies in a jet suit. The hero wingsuit base jumps off of skyscrapers, etc. There's a being in it who is all powerful, who could literally destroy universes, etc. When you look at the cover of Johnny Fazuli and the Transfinite Reality Engine, you're not thinking any of that. You're thinking, wow, this looks cool, but kind of weird. And what the actual F does that have to do with your pitch, dude? contrary to my partner in book barking crime of this convention, Ingrid Moon. Her covers are bang on point. They're bang on point for what people expect the content in her books to be. They are flashy, they are fun, they are contemporary, and they're Maya. They're most advanced yet acceptable. They're alluring, colorful. I saw people touch her books as she pitched them, and I could tell that the number one criteria for their decision whether or not to reach into their wallet and buy was the cover. They thought they looked cool. They imagined her book or books on their science fiction bookshelf, and it made them happy. Coupled with her great pitch. She's talking about assassins and the evil corporation and a sprawling Star Wars-like saga. And if you like Ender's Game, you'll like this, but with a twist. And they bought. She outsold my ass. And I helped her sell too, which I'll get into a second. But she had 10 times the sales that I did in order of magnitude. And a big reason is twofold. She really connected with each and every potential buyer. But I think most significantly, her books sold themselves based on their appearance. Corporations spend hundreds of millions on market research, where to put the products in the store, how the aisles are shaped, how the products look on the shelves, how consumers make decisions at the point of sale, and why. There's science to this. There's statistical behavior to this. If you want sales in aggregate, so at the end of the day, you get more sales than less on most days under most circumstances, Maya, baby. Most advanced yet acceptable. It's gotta fit the consumer's predetermined vision of what the hell it is you are selling. All of this is patently obvious. But other rules apply to creativity, which I'll also get into in a second. But Ingrid, by point of comparison, complementary comparison to moi, has got it down. She had the big, bold poster. She had quotes from excellent reviews. And it looked legit. It looked professional because it was legit. It was professional. She was at the ground zero of the sci-fi fantasy tribe. And she had engineered the presentation and the content of her books for maximum appeal. And it worked. It worked. And I saw it viscerally in action, and it was cool. It was so cool to see. Now, what is my takeaway from this revelatory expanse like commercialized science fiction? Well, my takeaway is, as I told Ingrid too, that this is awesome, but I don't think I'm going to change my behavior at all. And the reason is my own stubbornness. I'm not writing necessarily to be popular. I'm writing because, frankly, I have to. It's my identity. And ever since I was in my early 20s and discovered my capital B purpose in life, which is to write a novel that I, myself, moi, in my own solipsistic, narcissistic, self-focused, self-absorbed, obsessive, ADHD, dopamine-deprived kind of way, claim as my success. And my success is the writing, is the publishing, and the publishing is the marketing. I'm not an advocate here in any stretch saying that books sell themselves. They do not. Books sell better if you do what Ingrid did and does and not what Mookie Spitz is doing. That's how you sell. I'm not sure if selling is my goal. Actually, selling isn't my goal. Do I like getting a sale? Of course. As much as Ingrid, I was happy dancing when someone actually bought the Fazuli. And when people actually bought the Super Santa series. Did a lot of them buy it? No. But I did get some sales. Enough to pay for this? No. Cumulatively, not even enough to pay for the books. It wasn't like I was giving them away, but profit was not the motive here. It was experiencing this. It was seeing this all in action and participating in it in a wonderful and visceral way. And in that sense, beyond expectation. Super duper mission accomplished in the most wonderful way. So for that, in and of itself, I'm so thankful. And as I'm going through my learning experiences, supplemented with that, I have a few tactical things I learned too, which is another co-author, if you will. We've got a writers Discord group. Greg Sorber, he does this Pax Mechanic series, kind of Transformers 2.0. And when he signed a book for a buyer, then he put the location for so and such. Hope you enjoy this book. And then he put in LA Comic-Con 2025, and then he signed it. Little things like that you would never think of. That's a good best practice. Another good best practice that Ingrid shared: give shit away for free. And the shit you give away for free, have it with your contact information. So Ingrid had printed a bunch of book markers, right? Page markers. And they were colorful and beautiful and had, drumroll please, a QR code to her stuff and her email address and her email list, her newsletter, contact, touch point, conversion, always be selling. Back to Glengarry, Glen Ross, and Mamet. Always be selling. Every opportunity is a connection. Every connection should be a kind of conversion. Give them something for free. Here's another best practice: have them take pictures of your stuff. So if you don't have a card, which I didn't, Ingrid had cards, she had little mini brochures, she had bookmarks, she had free stickers. See, she is so smart. She knows what she's doing. I did not. I do not. Reach out. When they walk by, don't let them just walk by. Call out, engage them. When they engage, hold their interest and get a conversion. Always get a conversion. Either a sale right there, if you can. And in lieu of that, give them something for free with your contact info. And if you can't do that, or in addition to that, have them take pictures. Everyone's got a smartphone. Here's my book. If you got that QR code, shove it in their face in a nice way. Convert. Don't lose the opportunity. All awesome best practices, whether you are selling science fiction books, an illustrated holiday satirical novel, or anything else. Insurance, crypto, convert the mofo. Mammoth style, boiler room style. But these are just sales and selling basics. You live and you learn. And I thought that this was really, really compelling. And here I segue to a few observations that I shared with Ingrid and with myself. And the number one takeaway in this category is the difference between a pitch and the synopsis of your book or what you're selling. And this goes to the heart really of consultative sales too, which is you got folks wandering by your booth. You've only got seconds to get their attention. So the first is the icebreaker. Do you like science fiction? Yes. Come on over. What kind of science fiction do you like? Doesn't matter what kind they say. There's something at the table for them. No, I don't like science fiction. Well, don't stop there. Maybe today is the day, or start now, or look at what you're missing. We got multiple sales with this strategy where people are shaking their head, no, I don't like science fiction, and they're buying all three of Ingrid's Galactic Empire Strikes Back Ender's War saga because we drew them in. So always be closing. A, B, C. Terrific to see this stuff in action. Once again, though, there's a difference between the pitch and the synopsis of the book. So Ingrid has a wonderful new title. It's called Biohunter. And you could take the long route and explain the plot in more detail, but I clocked her doing this. It takes at least 30 seconds of time in a busy, congested, kinetic live environment to get that across. And ideally, it takes as much as a minute, which is an eternity. However, if you pitch the book, then in a sense, the synopsis is contained within the pitch. And when you pitch, this is an old Hollywood trick, start with what people already know so you don't need to do any of the explaining. So her book takes place in the far future in a post-apocalyptic world where smatterings of high technology are mixed with a wild Darwinian jungle-like environment. That's a lot like the video game and streaming content Fallout. Fallout was huge. Post-apocalyptic setting, fight for survival, has a certain mood to it with a steampunk-like feature. Fallout. Where does it take place? The world it takes place in is kind of like Fallout. Evil corporation, all that. And then the mechanism of her book is a human is a biohunter. So there are loose creatures, in this case, a young mutant, a mutation, and the biohunter, I'm leading myself here, has to take out the mutant. So it's kind of like Hunger Games in a sense that they're trying to kill each other. And hearing myself say this out loud, and I'll bring this up with Ingrid, it's kind of like Blade Runner too, which is, it's like Fallout meets Hunger Games. And I didn't even really bring up Blade Runner because Blade Runner is a slightly older movie and the remake wasn't that popular. All the kids know Game of Thrones. Hunger Games. I actually made that mistake several times. And even if you make a mistake, by the way, in a pitch, that's funny too, because people don't expect perfection. They expect connection. People loved, unless they felt you were either, they ignored you if you were annoying them, but they loved the outreach. This person is giving me attention. They are selling to me. I am the star. Come impress me with your wares. So Ingrid's gateway book, like a gateway to her oeuvre, was a shorter book, only $10, Biohunter, badass cover. Remember, I'm talking about the covers, fit the storyline, fit contemporary science fiction, action, Fallout meets Hunger Games. Really? Oh, I love Fallout. Or Hunger Games. Yeah, there's a mutant, a young mutant, and someone's trying to kill her. And then they, instead of killing each other, they end up teaming up. Gotcha. Is that exactly what the book's about? No. But hey, are you interested in science fiction? Oh, yeah, kind of. Would you be into reading a cool book for only $10 where it's Fallout meets Hunger Games? Oh, my, well, that sounds kind of cool. And they instantly understand what you're talking about. So, art of selling, best practice number 13 or 14 here is the pitch is not the synopsis, and the synopsis to a large extent is irrelevant. So you don't need to worry about being precise because they're not going to remember. And I'm not advocating false advertising here. They're not going to remember. They don't care. And most people aren't even going to read your book. They're buying it. Why? Because the cover looks cool and the book will look cool on their shelf. And they're buying it like a tchotchke. When someone buys a pin or a little statuette, they're not buying it to go home and spend time with it. They're buying it to display it in their home. And many people have a little library or a shelf by their bed. So when they're bored or they can't sleep, they pull out a book, they read a page or two, and then pass out. That's it. That's 99% of people who buy books. Now, they might read in general, but the chance that they're going to read your book, pretty damn low. So pitch it. Ask them what they like. Lead the witness. Find elements within your book, within your content that they would relate to. Get them excited about it. Have them talk about it and pay it off with content that's actually in your book that fits their expectation. I did this with Fazuli. Now, Fazuli, if you're in the 0.00000000001% of the human population who has read this book, then you would know, and you don't even have to be in that population. You don't even need to read it. Just take my word for it, that it's got politics, it's got war battles, it's got satire, it's got the war between the generations, it's got the war between the genders, it's got Gen Z fighting each other for the spoils. Women are doing better than men. It has the conflict between the world the boomers have created and the chaos that the Zoomers have to deal with. There's jealousy, there's intrigue, there's humor, there's psychology, there's history, there's math, there's science, blah, blah, blah. Something for everybody. So if someone came up to me and they said they're into hard science fiction, boom, there's a 10 by 10 jar. There's a 10 by 10 cylinder that can simulate all of reality, like the infinite library or the near infinite library of Borges. Do you know that short story? The simulator is actually kind of like a time machine. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I see what you mean. Blah, 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 blah. Do you like stories about con men and con artists? Oh, yeah, I love the good hustle story like Ocean's 11, right? Oh, yeah, it's exactly like that. To the point where there's scenes in Vegas and Cancun. Do you like Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas? Do you like William Gibson, Neuromancer, with AI and technology and virtual reality? Blah, 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 blah. The point I'm making, though, is that the pitch is not the synopsis, and the synopsis you do provide is based on what you ask and the potential buyer leading you to provide them with value based on your inquiry into what they're into. What a great best practice. My other podcast show, Bald and Bloviating, is all about this. Maybe I should have posted this summary there, or maybe I can do another episode talking about this. But the art of selling consultatively is letting the buyer lead you as the seller, and then adjusting your pitch and your synopsis, your overview of the product or service or book or whatever, based on the information that you receive from the buyer. It's not like, hey, come on into the showroom. Check out this car right here. It's got an AM, FM radio and a bucket seat, leather bucket seats. It's got a 457 Hemi. There were only a few of those made. Who gives a shit? Flip that around. Hey, how are you doing today? What you up to? Oh, you're looking for an auto. That's great. What do you want to do with it? Are you single? Are you married? Do you want this to be a cruise machine so you get laid? Or do you want something practical for the whole family? Are you saving on gas? Or it's really about looking fabulous? Your dream car come true. This is vitally important information that most people selling shit don't understand. It's really at the heart of consultative selling, and companies make this mistake all the time. In my paid professional life, where instead of burning through money presenting my book, I'm actually making money working for clients. The number one rule that I share is it's not about you, it's about your customer. Follow the money. Even major corporations, products where you've got millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in investment capital and research, they're self-obsessed. There's the feeling that I need to be like a peacock, strutting my multicolored feathers so I can attract a mate. It's all about me. It's all about my feathers. No! It's all about the mate. What do they like? Well, if they like feathers, well, then it works in that kind of way. But most people are just like you. They're self-obsessed. Only the difference here is they got the money and you're trying to take it. So for that money to go from their pocket into yours, you need to appease them. And they are self-absorbed. They have several problems that they need to solve. They have expectations that you need to understand. And they are seeking a value proposition that they most often don't even really know or understand or appreciate. You need to engineer your selling to extract information from them. What's the pain point that your product or service is capable of solving? And in what way would they like for that pain point to go away? What is their ideal vision of the solution to their problem? And what are the reasons to believe that your product, your service, your science fiction saga is going to solve that problem, is going to become a flattering reflection of themselves? And then you've got a conversion. You've got a win. You've got a sale. Ingrid sold 10 times as many books. And I applied these practices to help sell Ingrid's books. She was gracious enough to invite me. She, in turn, helped sell my books. And we had a wonderful, reciprocal, complementary relationship. But at the end of the day, she sold at least 10 times as many books as I did. She deserved it. And she did so because she catered to the needs of the audience from the top on down. And I created more disruption than anything else. I was attention-getting and quirky. But the look on everyone's face when they looked at Ingrid's stuff was, oh, this looks cool. And when they looked at my shit, it was like, what the actual fuck is this? And that can work to a certain extent, but not in this kind of environment. You need to appease the audience if you want the audience to reciprocate. Maya. Most advanced, yet acceptable. It's got to be acceptable. It's got to be comfortable. It's comfortable with enough of a titillation. It's got to be piquant to the point where it's just a little bit spicy. So when they buy it and it sits on their shelf, it looks like all their other science fiction books, but it's different enough to be another sci-fi series that can hold its own. That is the art of this entire process. Ingrid rocked it. I did not. And if I would go to another one of these, I'm not going to change my lovely niece's cover. I love it. I'm in the throes of writing my second book, and it'll be a variation of the same theme. Kiss My Ass Universe. Eat me. I will starve. I will go broke. Because, like Frank Sinatra, I'm doing it my way. Because otherwise, why the hell am I doing it? For me, I'm talking about me. My goal isn't to sell books, to be a famous science fiction author. My book is to realize my dream of having a purpose in my life. And that purpose is to write a book that I love it. I love Johnny Fazuli and the Transfinite Reality Engine. I killed myself writing this goddamn book. And I love it. That's my payout. Otherwise, I would be spending that time buying and selling crypto. I would be an investor. I would do something, anything except burn through my wallet, exhaust myself for negative ROI because I love it. Now, again, don't get me wrong. We had a gentleman, Anand Gandhi. He is the writer-director of Ship of Theseus, I believe. He introduced himself. The movie came out in 2012. And this guy, I believe he was on a panel. They had panel discussions too, in addition to the autographs and the selfies. They had the entire cast of Daredevil, I think, on a panel. They had producers on the main stage, on the side stage. They had panel rooms where little conference rooms set up, where in a more intimate setting, you could see people talk about their craft, everything from CGI and art direction to scripting, all these, because they had all the experts, all the key opinion leaders, the subject matter experts, the SMEs, the marketers, the producers, if you want to break into the industry, if you're just curious. You had all this going on in parallel, simultaneously swirling throughout the 3 days. If you had downloaded the app using a QR code, you could see the programming, which is pretty extensive. They did a good job for LA Comic Con, from what I could tell. Everyone seemed satisfied, if exhausted, and their wallets emptied, which again, from the conference producer's point of view, mission accomplished. But anyway, I digress within this digression. This very famous Indian director-writer came up and was talking to Ingrid, and Ingrid sold him on her book, on her Ender's Game Star Wars saga. And it became evident that this guy's got game. He's touring around the booths, looking at content. This guy's background is in writing dialogue for Indian TV, I believe. He did this award-winning indie movie, which propelled him to the heights of the craft through awards and exposure. He's got this new one going on, Maya Narrative Immersive Experience. He's got Hugo Weaving doing the voiceover. That's about as pitch perfect as it can get for that kind of content and focus and strategy. And anyway, Ingrid kind of sold him in, and then I tried to schmooze him a little bit. And he gave me my Andy Warhol 15 seconds with him. And I pitched the Fazuli book as the multiverse concept. And you could tell he had game because this is the first time ever pitching my book to anyone, friends, families, colleagues, people at the convention, people I don't know, people online. And this guy finished my sentence. I said, if the multiverse is real and an infinite number of universes exist where every possibility is expressed, and someone figures out a way of jumping universes, then in a sense they have created, and then he kind of finished the sentence, a machine that could grant any wish. And then I simultaneously felt brilliant and stupid because this guy knew exactly where I was going. This guy probably gets pitched ideas 24/7. Maybe he's heard it before, but I just think he's really smart. and he's a writer and he's a storyteller, and he got it. And that was awesome. So he's buying Ingrid's book, and I go, here's the multiverse book. Just take it for free, enjoy it. And he said, no, I support artists. I will buy your book too. And he got it. And that's a network connection. That's pretty good. I'm going to try to track this guy down and send him an email or something. Hey, remember me, Mookie, the multiverse guy? And I'm vainglorious in the sense that if this smart guy bothers to actually open the book and start reading it, I think he'll like it. And I think he'll understand not only the plot as he did instantaneously and even ahead of me, but I think he'll appreciate the unique format that I took with the obsessive 3-line sentences throughout the book, like lyric poetry. And I think the power of my prose will resonate. It stands out. And I'll follow up. Now, I bring this up for a number of reasons. One, the value of these things isn't just sparking your book, getting points of sale, and trying to at least break even on the amount of money you spent prepping for this thing and getting the booth and putting the marketing materials together and getting the inventory and hauling it in and hauling it out and maybe staying in a hotel nearby and paying for gas and the opportunity cost of not working and prepping, negative ROI for the most part. But it's the networking, it's the connection. I connected with a bunch of podcast people, connected with Steve, who puts together the science fiction novelists anthology, and today I submitted a couple of my short stories to him. So I'm outside of my usual comfort Mookie zone, and I wouldn't even call it a comfort zone, just because again, I'm so self-absorbed and kind of lazy in this way for marketing my own stuff, because my motivation is more in the creation than the distribution. But it feels good to connect with real people. And that to me is my biggest takeaway from this event, being the social extrovert. You can tell I can't STFU. I love talking not only to a microphone, but to people. I can talk to anybody, the Pope, a homeless person. I used to pitch, and still do, to advanced degrees in the healthcare industry. I would command a room and speak with authority to a room full of PhDs and PharmDs and executives. I'm fearless that way. You can say that I'm clueless. It's as if I know enough to not know that I don't know, and that makes me courageous, which is a great way of describing perhaps my writing too. But I'm confident that way. The issue is not being shy. The issue is priority and perspective, and back to this idea that for me, the audience doesn't even come last. The audience doesn't exist. And that might sound absurd to many people, but writing my Fazuli book, I never really thought about anyone else reading it. I did go out of my way to simplify my concepts, to make the narrative crystal clear as I could, and to make it a great book. The definition of a great book for me is obviously comprehensible. Not only comprehensible, but engaging, an exciting read. The best read. Everything that I've ever learned and known, throw it into this most perfect novel that I always wanted to write. And I can get better and better at it. I'm going to improve on it with the second book, the third book. But I never thought about what I should write in terms of what an audience might optimally expect. I did write it to educate, with the tacit assumption that I had to do some explaining among the descriptions, that I had to tell and show, not just assume that people would know what the fuck was in my mind, But that was part of the fun for me. And what I'm getting at, the social extrovert here is a super duper creative introvert. And that makes an experience like this event so striking for me and so moving emotionally and cognitively that on the one hand, I'm great selling. Go talk to Ingrid Moon. She'll collaborate or corroborate my collaboration. I was pretty good at selling mostly her books because her books sold. And I loved it, reaching out to people, talking to people, making small talk. I remember Ingrid would be across the way talking to another artist at their booth, and I'd be like, Ingrid, come over, sign one of your books. And I could feel the joy in her strut back to the booth that I was doing some of the legwork for her, that I wasn't just taking up space, I was actually helping her sell. So I can sell, I can talk, I can engage with people. I love talking to people. I love talking to people on my podcasts. I love meeting new people. I love engaging with people. Like everyone else, I'm judgmental. Like everyone else, I think most people deep down kind of suck. But going full circle, everyone here didn't. Everyone here was awesome because everyone here was part of the same tribe, and our differences were washed out in our shared community of weirdness. We were all tripping for 3 days, and it was great. So this all said, this experience didn't so much get me out of my comfort zone as stimulate me in ways that I suppose I needed and that I cherished and that I really enjoyed. And everything in moderation. Now I'm back to my apartment, and there are noises outside. I live in an apartment here in Lake Forest, California. There's a parking lot. Last week, they've been landscaping, so you get this grinding up the trees, you know. The work people are like yelling at each other. So my screen door is closed, my fan is off, and I'm sweating balls in the heat with the microphone in my face. But I wouldn't have it any other way. But I say this in such stark contrast to the wonderful experience that I had all weekend long. Such the opposite, and everything in moderation, yin and yang. That constitutes a good life. So to me, I might not naturally take to actually connecting with real people about my content and the content of others. But every once in a while, it spices it up. And who knows? Maybe somebody will take notice. My last podcast before I did the Comic-Con was Give Me a Break, which was a funny way and my own darkly cynical way of saying that I have been spewing content for some time now, and I haven't cracked it. I haven't cracked it in terms of creating critical mass for its own fan club, my own fan club or community. People are kind of finding my stuff ad hoc. I get some people drift in, drift out. There aren't that many Mookie fans. And my content in the form of my books haven't really taken off. It's not like they've gone viral. And frankly and transparently, most books self-published sell less than 1,000 copies. I am in that illustrious subset. And it would be nice if I sold more. And it would be terrific if I could monetize to the point where I could just do this full time and not stress out about my debt and my real world responsibilities. But maybe my debt and my real world responsibilities are putting fire under my ass and giving me that contrast to jump back and forth between worlds and gain that sense of perspective, not take anything for granted. And you can say a lot about how I'm living now, and at the very top is happiness, followed very closely by an inability to be bored. There's never a dull moment. I always got to be doing something because I need to pay the rent And I also need just as desperately to be creative like this in my own capacity, in my own way. And what I've discovered is inclusive of that, and as a part of that, is being able, willing, and excited about participating in events as open and extroverted and wild and engaging and loaded, rife with potential as LA Comic Con 2025. So thanks for listening. If you want to comment, I'm eager to hear about it. More on selling and more on my experiences and more on my potential networking and contacts as I continue being bald and bloviating. Thanks so much for your ear and your thoughts and your follows.